Okay, so welcome to our final Let's Play videos of 2016. My name's Dave Millard. I'm here with Charlie Hargood and Ricky Prince, and we're going to look at the courseworks produced by our students on the game design and development course at Southampton. Ricky, do you want to say a little bit about what they were asked to do this time?
Absolutely. So this coursework was about looking at one of the sort of cutting edge innovations within the games industry, the sort of techniques that have come about in the last few years, really. What we asked them to do was to make sure the game included one of the following innovations. We gave them the choice of adaptive difficulty, procedural content generation, the use of a novel game interface, so either the output interface or the input, or a game that involved real-world location-based elements.
And I think most of the games we've got are procedural generation adaptive difficulty, aren't they? Which I guess is kind of understandable.
Indeed, yeah. We've got a couple of novel output interfaces that we'll see at the end, but most of them are those top two.
So this should be quite interesting. So one of the interesting things with these, I think, is how they actually work behind the scenes. So hopefully we can remember when we spoke to them how the actual system, the algorithms were functioning. Sure. And we'll try and mention that as we go through as well.
Okay then, so let's start with our first game, Bumble Bee Blitz. So
Race to the end. Also, it's a two-player.
So do you want to play?
Go on. Let you play.
Yeah.
Go on. I'll be.
Okay. So you be Booster, and I'll do arrow keys. So who marked this one? Okay,
this was me.
Not me.
Oh no! You're going to get before you even started. You don't even know what you're doing.
I had a quick look at this one and was trying to work out what this was. I presume it's adaptive difficulty.
It looks like procedural generation.
So basically, it's procedural generation.
Okay.
And the way that it works is, the hexes represent different things. The yellow ones are the ones you travel through. The lighter they are, the faster you travel, and the coloured ones have special powers. And I can't remember exactly what. So the purple one puts a ring around you.
Yeah, purple one's bad. Green one clears.
The green one clears the route, and I think the blue one puts a line across. And I'm going to go off the screen. There you go, and you win.
Right? Cool. Right. So do we have a?
But that's procedural rather than dynamic.
It's procedural generation of the background basically. So what it does is it generates a grid. I think it's something like 6 hexes high and about 40 wide. And then it randomly populates them with a weighting with all the different colours.
Sure, right. So that makes a lot of sense to me. It looks like so you could definitely argue that there is a benefit to the procedural generation here because it's clearly designed for sort of rapid replay, right?
Yes.
And that's what that's what the procedural generation allows. So it means that you don't have the learned map, right? You're having to respond to what's going on.
Absolutely. And I actually they did quite a nice job, I think, of linking the whole aesthetic together. Yeah. So one of the things that I was a bit worried about with this game was that if you are just randomly generating these, is a sophisticated enough generation technique?
Sure.
And I think the argument was what they were going for was something that was kind of very frantic. They've gone with this kind of bees thing. They've got the Ride of the Valkyrie going on in the background.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of hectic and trying to get ahead and getting stuck
and I guess procedural generation for me
it kind of worked. Yeah.
So for procedural generation, sort of enables that as well, right? Because procedural generation is about sort of creating sort of a bit of randomness in there.
What does purple do?
I thought it puts a ring.
It puts a ring around you, not the enemy.
Does it? Or is it the enemy? Oh, no, it puts a ring around the enemy.
Okay.
I think.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this screams of a game that could be a dynamic difficulty adjustment. If you're generating the new things,
we've always said that procedural generation and adaptive difficulty are pretty one of the same. Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that they've generated, I guess you'd call it offline. They've generated the whole grid up front.
Yes.
And there's definitely the possibility that you could before it starts.
But it's different every
no, I think that's the right way to do it actually. Right, to do it offline rather than online, because the thing is with the because the way of doing it like that, doing it offline, means that with this rapid replayability that you've got going on, you're not going to get stuck into a situation where every time you start again you have to wait for the algorithm to run to generate it for you. But that said, the algorithm's obviously clearly quite simple. So
no, what it does, it runs up front and generates the whole
every
thing
start. So
at
that
the start of every level.
what you mean is if it's doing it every time.
So that's
the thing
online.
comes onto screen.
That's online generation, procedural generation. Then, okay, fair enough. I don't know. I might argue that you could do this offline, right? You could generate a whole bunch of grids in advance and just use them. But then again, I guess maybe then you'd see repeats and you'd lose the effect of it. There's arguments for both there, I think.
So I think for me, what I was kind of thinking was they could actually generate the hexes as they came onto the screen. Right?
Yes,
they could literally generate it. So that's why I was sort of suggesting that we're doing it up front, because they're generating it before each play.
So it depends. So did they explain to you their algorithm for deciding where the hexes go?
So as far as I know, there are no rules here for the hexes. It's randomly generated. I think it's weighted.
So I think
they also one of the things they did do, which I thought was really nice, was they play tested a lot to make sure they got the right balance. So for example, they've got sort of power ups, if you like, which benefit you if you're ahead, but also ones that benefit you when you're at the back. So kind of you've got kind of built-in catch-up mechanisms.
So actually, I think that is actually a weakness here. Actually, I think that what they could have done with this, and you see this a lot with these sorts of procedural generations, is actually looked for interesting patterns within the level.
Yes,
okay, so the idea that, for example, one power-up is often followed by another, or that you create, two dead zones with a narrow bridge between them, and things like that. Things that encourage meaningful, interesting play in that way, rather than just a random scattering. Now, I understand it's not entirely random. There's a weighting based on what they think is well balanced, but including that patterned aspect to it would make for a stronger procedural generation.
Procedural content generation doesn't mean removing all elements of level design. You can still design the things that get generated.
Precisely.
So as I said, they had a defence against that, which was to do with the nature of the game and the kind of the chaotic feeling they were going for. But even so, I see what you're saying. I mean, it is worth noting, I think, it's a really nicely put together little game.
Oh, lovely.
Right? It plays really nicely. It's meaningful play. Right? You really can play against the other person.
Yes, absolutely.
And actually, some of the little game design choices that they've made work really well. So I really like the one that puts a ring around the other person. And the reason I like that one is because it's not always a good idea to get it. Because sometimes it catches you out.
Way.
Right? Yeah. So actually, it's not just a case of just go for the pale coloured ones and grab every colour you can get. It's not actually you can be a little bit strategic about what you're doing, and that's kind of fun.
So I was going to say that the movement of the bee feels a bit sluggish, and you sometimes feel like you fall off the back of the screen too easily. But that also contributes to the choice of what you try and get, because there might be a purple over there, but you can't get over there very easily. Even if you've got like a clear route, it's not always the right thing to go for.
So I agree that there could have been more rules in the generation, but actually in this case I think it's sort of defensible.
No, I think at the end of the day they've made a polished game. They've gone with procedural generation, and they've made good use of procedural generation. Right, it's a game that is suitable for procedural generation and takes advantage of the impact of that. So,
one of the key things we said was along these lines of does it add anything to the game? And I think clearly in this case, because of the replayability, actually you are better off doing it this way than having design levels.
Yes.
Even though the design levels might be slightly better.
But once you ace 2 or 3 design levels, you lose that replayability. And it's definitely a quick restart game.
So good job, I think.
Sure.
Really nice little game, and again shows you sometimes that keeping it simple can be really effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next game we have to look at is Callums Game, named I believe because it was made by 2 people both called Callum. Okay, and we've got some sort of. Oh right, we're on.
There you are.
Yeah, we go. Right.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a maze, and we've got a gun. Hooray!
So I think there is a jump as well. I think.
Okay. Space. Yeah, indeed, that works. So floor's a bit slidey, but I'm moving through. I've got a mini map here.
Jump on?
So those little red dots coming round. Okay. Kind of. Little Roman Dalek-y things. You can shoot them and you can jump on them. So
jump.
Okay. Oh. So there's a couple of things about this game. I'll let you restart. So basically, the aim of the game is to find the green exit point. There are robots in the game. It's actually a stealth game, and if you look at the top, it says whether you're concealed or not, and whether they know about you or not.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So to go with that, it's one hit and you die, whereas it takes you, I think, 3 hits. So they've alerted, they've seen you. I'm not sure if it's possible to beat. Remember, you can jump.
Yeah.
Can you shoot them? Are they
you can shoot
killable?
them, but it takes you 3 shots to kill them.
Wow.
Okay.
And your gun also takes a while to reload.
Yeah,
so if you
there's a little
fire,
light on the side.
there's a little light, and you'll see that it goes, I think, red, and then it doesn't go green again for a moment. So actually, the idea is you shouldn't be trying to kill them. You should be trying to get past them. You don't have to sneak. You can leg it and jump over them, and you're much faster than they are.
He's done it. He's done it.
You've done it. You're detected, but you made it. Oh. Straight back to getting and shot. So obviously, what's the innovation here is the procedural generation, and it's maze generation. Mm-hmm. There were some interesting choices here. So they didn't choose a standard maze generation algorithm. They built their own, and the reason is they didn't want a sort of classic maze. They wanted more of a space with kind of sort of arbitrary walls, bigger rooms. So if you look down the bottom of that map there, you'll see bits which aren't really corridors. They're kind of
like little loops.
Like
and
you've
stuff.
got like there. If you look down at the mini map, you can see there's kind of a space with a couple of floaty walls and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So they wanted to go for that kind of aesthetic. Or at least that's what they said. Whether or not they just said, "Hey, this is what we've got. Let's go with it." I don't know.
No, so I spoke to these guys earlier on in design, and that was certainly what they were intending.
Right, okay.
Although I'm not sure if they've necessarily achieved that, because this still very much feels like a corridor-based maze.
Yeah. There's not big open spaces.
Yeah, the occasional blocks of floor like that. This still feels like corridors rather than rooms.
Absolutely.
But that said, so I guess we should need to return to the questions here of, is this a good use of the technology?
So well, let's start off with our first question really was, is it effective? Does it work so they procedurally generated the maze, does it work to play the game? Can you play the game?
Yeah.
Is it fun?
So you can definitely play the game. It's definitely a game. Is the procedural generation adding a lot? Difficult to say. I think it's definitely adding something. Okay, I think the idea that of adding procedural generation to this means that you don't necessarily know exactly what to expect, and you definitely have this rapid reloading and failing thing that I'm doing here. But is it
a game that suits that?
Is it a game that suits that? Indeed. So this is the thing. So the natural comparison for me for this, although it's not a stealth game, is something like Hotline Miami. Okay, where you're encouraged to basically to play, to fail, to reload and go again very, very quickly. But that is very much a game about learning the levels and becoming practiced at it. Whereas the idea of this one is that, oh no, you shouldn't be learning the levels. You should be trying to respond and think on your feet.
I think,
does that make for a more meaningful gameplay experience, though, is a tricky question.
So I think my problem with this is probably... So I think it's a perfectly reasonable attempt, by the way. I think it is right. It is playable. It works really well. I think the problem with it is that if you had a designed level, it would be better, right?
Yeah.
So
because there'd be set plays.
Because there'd be set plays,
have a bit of pacing to it,
and you'd be able to control the pacing.
Indeed.
I think there might be a little bit of adaptive difficulty here in that, depending on how well you do when it regenerates the level and so on.
More or less enemies.
If you'll notice up in the right hand corner, you've got these kind of upgrades listed.
Yeah.
And I believe what happens is you kind of accrue those every time you die, and then the idea is it's supposed to help you get through. So I think that a design level would have played better. So therefore, the reason for doing this is simply because for effort, it's easier to generate it than design all those levels. But I think what they could have done is they could have done more with the procedural generation to make it better. And they've obviously tried to do that, and they've tried to come up with certain corridors. But a bit like we were talking in the previous game, where you said about having choke points and having certain types of set, or having certain sort of templates.
Set plays, indeed. And I do remember talking to them about that in their original design. And maybe they tried to do it, but it didn't quite sort of pan out or something. It's difficult to say.
I mean, it definitely works. It's quite hard, but there's nothing wrong with being hard.
Indeed.
I mean, in terms of the quality of the game, it works well. You can play it.
Yeah, you can definitely play it. And there is an argument for their use of procedural generation. I just don't think it does sort of work. It's just I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best use of the technology.
No, absolutely. They had scope to expand on it.
Yeah. Okay.
But for the shortness of the game.
I think
So
it's ambitious, right? It's always ambitious to take something like procedural generation and apply it to something that is such a carefully crafted process as a stealth game. Stealth games are like the most meticulously crafted things possible, right?
Absolutely.
Because they have very careful, difficult to solve puzzles.
Yeah.
But I think that's the problem, right? Is that procedural generation is inherently chaotic.
So
I
I think also part of the problem here is the sort of the paucity of the level itself, because it is just a maze. And I think that once you've been detected, it's very difficult to go back into stealth. And there probably would have been ways of saying, well, maybe there could be different elements where while you can go back into hiding effectively and regain your stealth.
Regions that the robots wouldn't go into. Or
and there you
like
can
that.
put some rules in your procedural generation about how those regions sit with other types of elements in the game, and you get a bit more sophistication, and you might begin to get towards that kind of designed experience.
Sure.
So it's good. I think it plays okay. It's nicely executed.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe could have done just a bit more with the actual generation element.
Sure. Okay, I think we should probably move on. So the next game we have now is Deliverue. So you can generate seeds here. So the idea of this is procedural generation, and it randomizes. But if you want to share a map with someone, it will give us.
That's quite cute, actually.
Yeah, it's a nice one. I don't know what you put in there.
Well, I think so. That I was going to comment exactly on this because I looked at this before. It's great having the randomised for those two because you have no idea what you'd want to put in there, but also give the player some clue.
Yeah, I don't know.
Should this be 1,000? Should it be 4?
I'm guessing 5, but we're about to find out whether that's useful.
Okay.
Right. So the idea is this is a little sort of crazy taxi-esque game. How do you actually? Oh right, God.
Oh, you can change the camera.
Okay, so
see, I thought it was first person.
No, yeah, that was not the case in when I tested this. I think it changed with your rotation. But okay, anyway. So yeah, the idea is that the arrow is pointing to a box, and you have to get the box to the delivery location within the allotted time, and you have a procedurally generated city. And some of the roads are more busy than others, as in some have lots of parked cars, some are quite empty. And you have this sort of city block structure that's going on here.
Is that under any sort of rules, the busyness?
No, it's random whether
Do you
a
get
road...
taken to the busier roads later or something?
No, absolutely not. So the missions are entirely random, so go from A to
So
B.
including the placement of the pieces, so there's nothing to say that the endpoint needs to be a certain distance away from them.
Not as far as I recall. No,
Well, you had two there that were right next to each other.
Exactly, indeed. I believe they toyed with trying to create more intelligent missions.
So I mean, I like what they tried to do with the kind of cars on the side of the road, but I think they could have done more with the actual traffic itself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It's moving? Or?
Well, not necessarily moving, but make it bigger.
obstacle.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is, so the idea of this game is that it's a game about navigation, right? And that's why they've made good use of procedural generation, because the idea is that you can't learn the map. You have to sort of like learn to navigate around a strange space and remember routes and things like that. Yeah. And the idea of introducing traffic to the roads was that it means not all routes are born equal, right? Some routes are going to be more annoying to drive around, but because they're quite small and at the side of the road, they don't really interfere that much.
Also, do you actually need to remember, because you've got that arrow?
Yeah.
I mean, I presume there might be dead ends and things. Like there, you've got a bit of a loop there.
Exactly.
Okay, so they do exist, those ones. So did they have anything like that to kind of try and have dead ends, or to try and was it a maze algorithm?
So I can't recall the specific algorithm they used,
Okay.
but they did come up with. So it's an original algorithm that they put together, and it's essentially it's a sort of city block type maze thing. Yeah.
So in terms of the quality of games itself, it looks quite nice actually. It's quite clean.
Yeah, indeed, it's quite nice.
It's quite fun to play.
The camera looks a bit of a pig to move about.
Yeah, indeed. So this wasn't actually the case in the Expo. In the Expo, it was locked to the back. They've added this, allowing the mouse to it, or maybe they added that at the Expo, but not in the submitted version. And that's a bit of a you shouldn't have that. Just have it pointing forward. Okay. Don't make the person have to. Yeah,
but I mean, it's quite cute, isn't it? It looks really quite nice. I mean, you can imagine with a bit of extra time.
Yeah, indeed.
You could actually get it to the point where it was a very reasonable looking.
So you may notice that I'm getting the same missions here because I'm using the same seed.
The missions down to the seeds as well.
Well, no, you've got two seeds, two separate ones.
So mission seed.
So yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So I think
a leaderboard thing for that would be quite.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes.
So
the other thing is, I guess, the variability of the missions. So it might have been nice if you had a number of different types of objectives or something.
Yeah, indeed, or at least something that was discussed in early on development was the inclusion of like the notion of sort of easy, medium, and hard missions. Like hard missions where you definitely be a certain distance away from each other, and things like that. But it's pragmatics and the time they had.
All the things you'd add with.
But there's little things so you could have done like you have to collect multiple things in a certain order, or you have to take. Or you have different
via points or something like that.
Sort of,
there's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of ways you could play with it, right? Yeah. But for me, this is a good use of procedural generation in that you're creating something whereby you have to figure out your way around a space. If you want navigation to be the key, then not being able to rely on previous knowledge forces the player to relearn those navigation skills. So that's a good use. However, I think that some aspects of procedural generation, particularly the parked cars, could have been better.
I think giving the player some.
Because at the moment, for example, I'm not deciding to not go down roads because there's parked cars there because they're not that relevant. Whereas if I turned and there's like
go where the arrow's taking.
Indeed. If I turned down there somewhere and it was like, it's absolutely rammed for cars, maybe I'll keep going and find a better route.
But you're moving way too fast to make that decision. By the time you've made that decision that this road is too busy, then you're already halfway down it. You might as well go.
So again, what's interesting, I think, is that it's because they haven't got enough variety in the level, it makes the procedural generation difficult to get right. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine something where you have 3 different types of roads. So road where it's like a single route basically, dual carriageways, double carriageways. And again, you can imagine having traffic on those. So if you know that the traffic on the dual carriageway is really bad, then you have to make it. It's about again meaningful choices, isn't it?
Yeah,
it would also help you navigate. Like there are no clear signposts as to where you are in any place because every building looks the same, and adding that to the procedural content generation.
So a couple of unique buildings that get scattered into the map.
You're in the area where the shops are, or this is where all the high-rise buildings are, or you're in a residential area.
Theming.
Would help you. Just navigate a bit better.
And also think you're right. I mean, remember where you were going and so on.
So I think we're in agreement here that this is a good game that has made good use of procedural generation, but a missed opportunity in a number of cases.
I think some relatively simple additions to the complexity of the gameplay would have meant they could have done some cleverer things with the procedural generation and actually shown something off. That was but. It's a great basis, though, isn't it? You can imagine them taking that and actually building on it over a couple of weeks and making a really quite nice game, actually.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's best that we move on. Yeah. Okay, so our next game is the colourfully titled Robots Death Punch. And the idea is it's an FPS and it's continual survival mode, right?
Right.
So you have 2 types of pickup, health and speed pickups. And each wave, robots spawn and they try to run up and punch you.
Okay.
So we're trying to spot the robot.
Before it runs up and punches you in the back of the neck.
They try to robot punch you. That's
Hold
right.
shift to sprint.
Yeah, because I can sprint as well, but there's a robot.
There's one coming.
Yeah.
Oh, there are 2. Oh, right. Yeah, I go for the one that's closer.
Right, so you've got them both.
There you go.
Right, and the idea is this is an adaptive difficulty
get
game.
Get the green thing.
No, I don't need the speed upgrade yet. So
get the red thing.
I don't need the health one either. So the idea of this game is it's adaptive difficulty, okay, and it's recording a number of things about the player, such as how close the robots get to you, how many times the robots hit you, and there you go. Yeah, and I think that's it actually.
Yeah.
And it's trying to adapt the game based on that. So if robots are very close to you, then it spawns.
Still one out there.
Still one out there. He is. It spawns more pickups, I believe, in order to help you escape
on the fly,
or not on the fly. Each level, I think. And if robots hit you loads or not at all, then it controls the amount of robots it spawns.
Gotcha.
So that's
me health.
Yeah, let's get some health. And then let's have a look at some robots.
Okay.
And robots have a number of things that can be controlled about them. I think it controls their speed and also the number of them that are spawned.
Nice. So again, in terms of quality, looks good. Looks like it plays pretty well.
Yeah, indeed.
And you're definitely able to play it. I mean, it's meaningful.
Yeah.
You can.
Yep, indeed.
I also quite like this idea of just being chased down by faceless
Blue
robot men.
Okay. So I think
It's kind of cool,
so
actually. Yeah.
the endless wave spawner is a classic target for adaptive difficulty, right? This is in fact, you know, a lot of people when they think about adaptive difficulty games will obviously point at Left 4 Dead, and Left 4 Dead is the granddaddy of this sort of style of game here, and you know a lot of their play styles are endless waves as well. Yeah. So it's they've picked a good genre to match to their innovation here. I think the actual adaptivity engine is perhaps a little bit simplistic. I think
you're clearly doing too well.
Yeah, in that you know, just saying okay, I'm going to record how close the robots get and how many times you get hit, and use that to decide like how many more robots appear.
So
it's maybe
is it massively obvious what's happening? Like I know you. Know
this is the thing you see. So it feels like it's getting harder.
Good.
But that said, if I was playing a normal game, I would expect it to get harder without adaptive difficulty.
So what are they trying to achieve with their adaptive difficulty? Are they trying to get to that kind of sweet spot where it's just about achievable for you to do it?
Yeah. Will it oscillate around that and keep the player at?
Or is it actually going to end up where actually you just end up being alive forever?
This is the thing actually. So I'm gonna let this robot punch me to death and die and see what happens when I start again. So R to play again, because the problem with this is if it just starts me back at the beginning with no adaptivity, then we're only talking about a game that gets progressively harder, doesn't oscillate to try and find itself easier. So if I start with 2 enemies again here now, you see it started again at the beginning. You see, all right, okay, so that's a shame right there, because if it was, because the whole point of adaptive difficulty is about trying to find the sweet spot for the person, not continually get harder.
I suppose there is an argument against that though, which is that you could have different people playing.
It could be a different person playing, or you might not have played it for a long time, so it's difficult to.
Yeah, but you could change the definition of what a game is, right? You could say, okay, you have 5 lives, okay, and then within those lives, right, it oscillates in order to get you to the sweet spot.
We'll have
whereas,
you load up.
Yeah, indeed.
So I mean, I think it's very hard to judge whether or not they're getting the pitch of that difficulty right. And my worry with adaptive difficulty is that what you end up with is a game that's always too easy, right? And then it becomes boring. And what you want is a game that's always almost too hard. It's kind of, but not, you know, right on the edge.
It's got to be challenging. It's got to be challenging. I think as a developer, you've got to make a decision how long you want your gameplay to be. Yes. So you've got to say, we want the player to have a good time for 5 minutes, but then they'll definitely die. It'll definitely get too hard at the end of 5 minutes. And that's how you pick up that, where you balance your algorithm to point towards. Otherwise, as you say, you can have this thing where it's endlessly just hard enough, and you're playing forever. And
the other thing is why make it easier, right? Because I suppose they're allowing you a chance to recover. But you're not. It would make more sense if you were accruing things to face the next wave. Then by looking at how well you've done, they could then make an assessment as to how long you needed or what sorts of things you needed. But it just feels like it's, you know, perhaps there's just another wave coming, as it were. Yeah.
Oh, so that robot ducked then. I think that's something that I forgot to mention, is that sometimes the robots get clever and try to duck.
Oh, okay. But only sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know.
And only some of the robots.
So I mean, it's obviously very playable, right? Because I'm playing it plenty. What I think my conclusions for this game are they've picked a good genre to match to this particular innovation. So that's grand, and it's clear what they've done with it, and I can understand what they've done with it. But I think that they've kind of missed the point a little bit of adaptive difficulty, in that it's supposed to oscillate to finding a sweet spot, and this is just a continuous progression.
It is.
But it may do that eventually within the game. Yeah. You may get to a point where you're always getting 20 enemies because that's about what you can cope with.
Yeah. Again, I think they should have thought a bit more about kind of. Sort of recovery time, or why you need it to get easier, or why you need it to get more challenging. Yeah. But actually, with these type of games, it's very hard to tell. And obviously, I mean, you know, it obviously is getting more challenging. So it looks to me like it's very effective. It's a very well put together little game. I actually quite like that aesthetic. I think the face of this robot's running towards you is nice. Has a certain panicky feel to it that works really well. It's hard to tell whether the adaptive difficulty is adding very much. So again, it's that classic question: if they'd not gone with adaptive difficulty, if they'd just gone, or if they'd gone for something that was simpler, just like a linear
that just always increase by
So,
2.
so just every single time you had one more enemy, you know, every 2 or 3 things you got less power ups. Would that actually have been better?
Difficult to say, right?
It might have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I think perhaps it's not 100% convincing, but very hard to judge.
Okay, I think we should move on. So this next game is Diffuser.
So it's a top-down would-be 2-stick shooter if we were on
Sure.
on a console. You have to find the bomb on the level. It is
Find the bomb.
randomly generated somewhere on the level.
Okay.
You've got this edge. Don't go over the edge. That'll kill you.
Find and defuse the bomb. All right.
And there are a bunch of enemies, and it gets
Turn them
harder
into
each turn
puddles of
based
gore.
on how well you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another adaptive difficulty jobby.
It is adaptive difficulty, and it adjusts the pickups that you get, so the health and the ammo that you get, and armour,
So is that the
based
bomb there?
on how well you've been doing. No, the bomb looks like a stick of dynamite. It's normally quite near the centre where you spawned.
Okay.
I'll go back down there. Maybe you shot it.
Oh, there is.
Right, fine. Whoop. So find the bomb and then carry on. Right, bomb.
This is whatever it is. You have the most terrifying weapon I've ever seen.
Yeah. Just try to shoot.
Instantly liquidizes
You've
people.
run out of ammo, I think.
Okay, fine.
And there are some
There's the bomb.
some
to the
who've
top
just
right.
got knives.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I think what they were telling me that the dynamic difficulty is based on your shot accuracy and how much health you've got. So that will decide the next level, how many pickups of the things it will give you. But it had this interesting thing where there is exactly enough ammo for the number of enemies that you've got.
Right.
But it will spread them across the pickups depending on how good you are at picking up pickups.
Okay.
So if you're not picking up the pickups often enough, it will give you more pickups, but that won't get you more bullets. It will get you the same number of bullets that's pre-calculated you need. But we'll put them in more places, so I guess it's easier to pick them up. So small bits of ammo.
So it looks like one of the key problems is that they haven't thought enough about spawn location and the bomb.
Yeah,
yes,
indeed. So that's the first thing to say is that from the point of view of like even leaving the adaptive difficulty thing away for the minute, just talking about meaningful play. Okay, I start next to the bomb and run at the bomb. I'm there almost immediately. Okay, for a game of find the thing, that's problematic, right? Because I'm not doing any finding. I'm just running at the thing.
My tactic when I was playing this in the
it looks
Expo,
to me. So here you go. We've changed over now, and I've died straight away because it remembered you.
Oh,
it respawns and you carry on at your so you're at level 15 already. So it's got all that data about Charlie. So, But that became my tactic. Is I just run for the bomb.
Yeah.
Like you'd survive unless there were lots of enemies around. Or the bomb was like a long way away and past a lot of enemies.
Yeah.
The dominant strategy is just to sprint towards the bomb.
Yeah.
Not necessarily useful to
hit the bomb.
To try and shoot anyway. Yeah. Exactly. That's problematic, right? Because you need. Does that? Can you remember if it adapts based on how quickly you find the bomb?
Not that they said.
It's just a combat.
Bomb.
That's what it looks like.
It's obviously I'm playing the game of circle the bomb.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, but there's something strangely compelling about it. I don't know quite what it is. I mean,
it's the franticness of it. It feels a bit like Hotline Miami. It's like
yes,
it is. I've just got to survive. I've just got to survive.
And you've got that feeling that they've managed to get that feeling, which is very difficult. Which is that when I do get killed, I think I almost made it. I almost did it.
That's because the bomb is always so close.
Yes, it's hard to put almost. Okay, yeah, but despite my first level attempt, right, I go completely the wrong direction. But it's sort of enjoyable in the sense that all sort of top-down shooters are to some degree.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. But by making the main objective something that isn't affected by the adaptive difficulty, and then making the adaptive difficulty elements possible to ignore to some degree, you kind of remove the impact of the adaptive difficulties. This is the problem with this. One of the things we're assessing in this coursework is of your implementation and how you've made best use of the innovation. And I think what they've done here is they've come up with possibly quite a clever innovation in the way they're doing a bit of user modelling for adaptive difficulty, but it takes a back seat to the main dynamic, which is not particularly balanced.
But you can see this in action, right? Because I've taken over from you and I'm rubbish at this game. And immediately it has responded and it's given me a bit of breathing space. and I'm beginning to feel. So this is actually the first one of these adaptive difficulty games we've played where actually it's sort of working, and it's given me the space to learn the game.
Absolutely.
And
you're out of ammo, Dave.
I know. There we go.
The bombs right.
So yeah, and now it's getting a bit more, bit up.
No, indeed.
To my actual level of ability.
Their adaptivity engine actually looks pretty successful.
Yes, I think it is.
But like I said, my beef is more that it's not that their adaptivity implementation isn't successful. It's that they've made it less relevant by not tying it to the core mechanic. Arguably, this game might be better if they made it a more simplistic, clear the level objective. Right, because then you're clear.
I also like to say that I want to get bonuses for shooting 2 people at once, because your bullets go through them.
Yeah,
there you go.
But you've got 1 bullet per enemy, so that gains you extra bullets.
Yeah,
I did say to the Mini Expo as well. It's not clear what the goal here is. Like, what am I trying to? Well, it's obvious per level. It's pick up the bomb. But what am I trying to do overall? Like, am I trying to get to a certain level? Am I trying to get to a certain hardness? And I ended up having this meta. Giving myself this meta goal of, can I just complete as many levels as I can without ever
let's
picking
talk
up,
about suggestions.
like shooting, always go to the...
Let's talk about suggestions and ways we could improve this then. So one thing to improve it, I think, is that, as I said, if you made the objective just to clear the level, then you'd be bringing the thing that is adaptive to the forefront.
Yes.
Another thing you could do is if you're making your game about find the thing, then you could, if they find the thing very quickly, make it harder to find. So in this case, that means put it further away from the start. Another thing is that having this massive field of view makes it really easy to find the thing. So maybe you could say, okay, it's a nighttime level, and you've only got like a cone of visibility in front of you, which is your flashlight, and then you could look for things that way. That way, finding the stick of dynamite might be a bit harder.
I know there was sort of in jest about my whole kind of shooting multiple people at once thing, but actually, if they have got this clever thing with the bullets, they could make a lot more of that. And again, it could be quite a nice little meta game. Yeah. Where actually it's not just about killing enemies, but about killing enemies in a kind of a
sort of skill shot,
in a kind of a sort of skillful way, as I'm not ably demonstrating.
So the other thing you could add here is some level of procedural level design. So if there was some scenery that either exposed you to certain enemies, or you had to get through a bit of a maze that was blocked by enemies, that would force you to engage with the mechanic of shooting the enemies, which you don't have to at the moment. And would add to the aesthetic of, I can't find this thing. If there's a maze or some scenery that it isn't clear where to get past.
I just think the more I think about it, actually, because the thing is, you're right, you could add a bit of level stuff to it, but that would genuinely add complication and workload to the game. Whereas taking the bomb defusal aspect out would reduce the workload, and would arguably make the game better.
Yeah, and add a different final goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think good job. It clearly adapts.
Yeah.
It's very playable.
And it's fun.
It is fun. I'm sat here playing it, and it may be the fascinating liquidizer gun, whatever it is. But that is something about that. All right. So yeah. Cool. So good job. But again, could have done much more with it, I think.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
That's the end of that batch, I think. So
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the end of our first batch. We'll be back shortly with the next 5 games.